For Vincent Chase, the up-and-coming Hollywood actor at the heart of the TV show Entourage, life was all fame, fortune, and women. But he also wanted to be taken seriously.
I want to do Medellin. And if he does that, I will do Aquaman 2 for free.
And for Adrian Grenier, the guy who actually played Vinny, well, he could probably relate. While working on Entourage, Adrian started the environmental project Shift.com. Also made documentaries. Adrian went behind the camera to tell the story of a teenage paparazzo.
13 years old and you're a paparazzi? He said, yeah.
And more personally, he made a film called Shot in the Dark, in which he sets out to track down his estranged father.
Get out of the way here, initial.
Awkwardness.
Now Adrian's behind a new documentary called My Name is Faith. This is a really interesting story, really personal, only this time the personal part belongs to somebody else, Tiffany Sudela-Junker. Tiffany and her husband adopted 2 children who had suffered serious neglect. Grew up in a house with a meth lab, and as a result, the kids, especially the older child, Faith, suffered from what's known as attachment disorder, basically an inability to bond or feel empathy. It's a tough film to watch.
My birth father had me in his arms. And they were fighting with me right there in one arm.
A troubling look at kids desperately trying to get better and parents who will do anything to help their children. Please welcome to the show, Adrian Grenier. How are you, man? Good, how are you? Good to see you.
You too.
You want? Have a seat.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
This is, what's a hell of a documentary to be a part of and a hell of a story to tell.
Oh, yeah. It's a great one, though. It's very important. It's an important film.
Okay, why get involved in docs? Because, I mean, there's a lot of guys who have hit television shows. Not a lot, but your show lasted a long time. You didn't have to just get into the doc world, but you clearly have an affinity for it.
I was always inspired by the documentaries. You know, I don't know. It seems like such a vital storytelling form. You know, and maybe because I'm an actor and a filmmaker, so I'm very hyper aware of the devices of how stories are manufactured. And there's something so real and tangible about documentaries that you can't escape. You can't make it up. You can't manufacture it. You can't pretend. It's real life, edited, you know, and so it just seems so much more palpable.
But, you know, good documentaries are really either about shining a light on something or the search for truth. Are you on one of those quests in your life?
Yeah, well, I was always one of those kids in school that, you know, it's always like, why? Why? You know, oh, I have a question. And all the other kids would roll their eyes and be like, come on, let's just get through the day, you know, just sit there and be quiet so we don't have to actually do any work or question things. But I was always the opposite. I always had to know more and wanted to explore, and I was a very philosophical, questioning person. And I guess documentaries are just an extension of that sentiment, to try and look out in the world and make sense of it.
And we'll get into it with one of the filmmakers of the show. She's going to be one of the key story elements of the show. She'll join us after the commercial break, and we'll talk about this, Tiffany. But the idea of family dynamics, a modern family, a really tough childhood, adoption, and all that. Did you have any experience with that as a kid? Did you know?
Well, you know, my first film, Shot in the Dark, was dealing with the fact that I didn't grow up with my biological father. And I never had that rite of passage, you know, that a father, you know, imparts to a son, where you become a man at his hand. You know, he raises you and he lets you go. So that film was trying to figure out what that meant in my life. And I actually used the documentary as a way to process it and to learn about myself and to, in fact, you know, have that rite of passage through the film.
Did you struggle at all with the concept of really opening yourself up? Because you could do that with a therapist, but the idea of showing it to people?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's part of, you know, my acting part, you know, the part of me that likes to perform and share. I mean, I always look at film as a way to, you know, see, to live vicariously through the characters. So I've never had a problem being the sort of vehicle for those ideas as a performer. You know, I know that I'm carrying large ideas through the storytelling, and it's not necessarily about me. It's about, you know, what part I play in the whole film. So I look at the documentary as just an extension of that as well. It's just I'm playing a bigger part for a larger narrative.
In a way, is it also about nurturing that own individualism for you? Because when you work on a TV show, especially an ensemble show that takes on a life of its own, you don't get to be you. You know, and as an actor, especially as a young man, it grows and moves away from you. How much of this is just trying to hold on to what's important to you?
Well, you know, I mean, acting is important to me as well. I am an actor, by the way, for hire. Yeah. Call my agent, please. I'm with Gersh. But I'm also, it's really about storytelling. When I grew up, I was making films with my friends on high-8 cameras, and we would play different roles. And the most important thing was just to tell the story. It didn't matter if you were acting in it, or if you were holding the camera, or if you were, holding the boom. It was just a collaborative effort to try and, create a story, to bring it into fruition. And so I feel the same way now.
How many people recognize you from this? Let me play this clip for you.
So great, man.
That's a hell of a moment, man.
Yeah. I must be having a midlife crisis because I grew my hair back. Trying to relive my youth.
You got it back. There's a young kid in that video.
That was actually when I was making my first documentary, Shot in the Dark. And they were trying to get me to come do that video, and I was like, I'm making a documentary. I just can't be there. And then it clicked. I said, okay, you know what? Actually, I'll come, I'll show up, I'll be in the video, but I get to interview Britney Spears. And they agreed. So actually, I did an interview with Britney Spears about her father.
Can you play the Vinny Chase character for so many years and not have some of it left over in you?
Oh, man, I miss that guy.
But in theory, you could be that guy, I suppose, but...
In a lot of ways, I am. He'll always be with me. He'll always be with all of us, I think.
What's life after Entourage like for you?
It's great. I feel like I was part of such an important television show. It defined a generation, an era, and I'm extremely proud of it. And you know what? It's not entirely over. We still got movies to make, so...
Have you signed deals for those now? Where are we at with those?
Well, I don't think we need to sign it. I think it's just a given. Yeah. In good faith, we're all going to be there. Yeah. We'll all show up,
I know that President Obama liked Entourage a lot. And you talked about getting him a cameo. Does it has to be to the movie now if you ever get the president in there?
Obviously he's busy doing some other things. But if he can find the time,
You campaigned for him, didn't you? Did you get on phone, make phone calls and all that?
I did. I voted for him, and I think I'll probably vote for him again.
Would you do the campaign again?
Yeah. So, yeah.
What was the experience like campaigning for a president? And did the presidency go the way you wanted? Did you get what you wanted out of it?
Well, I always do my best to participate on the ground level. Getting out and communicating ideas with people and talking about what it means to be a citizen. It's not enough just to vote. I think you have to participate on deeper levels. So, I always do a little bit to campaign. No, I mean, it's important. It's great to be on a show about celebrity, be a celebrity on some level.
You made a documentary about paparazzi too, right?
And then to talk about it in documentaries. But it's more important to be a human being. You got to first be a human being before you're anything else. And so it's important for me to just remind myself and keep my feet on the ground and go out and participate in your democracy.
The conversation, of course, starts with this thing about this documentary you're working on now and a young girl in it. Let's talk to
Yes.
the woman who's really a part of the catalyst for this film. We're going to come back with a break, more with Adrian, but also Tiffany's going to join us, one of the documentary's directors. We'll be right back.
She would get into these rages and she would just go absolutely out of control, smashing things, hurting people. She just was very violent. I knew at that point that we needed serious help.
That's the documentary that Adrian and I were talking about. Tiffany Sudela-Junker joins us now, one of the directors of this film, one of the three, and also personal connection to the film as well. Just tell us about Faith.
Faith is an amazing kid that we adopted when she was 6 years old. She's very, very, very bright, and she has something called attachment disorder, which means that relationships and accepting and receiving love are difficult for her. Much more difficult, really, than you can imagine. And so those are
there
the
it is. Much more difficult you can imagine is exactly the right phrase, because when people watch this film, and hopefully they will, you start to see how some of the early trauma in these children, how it plays out in reality. How did Faith, like Faith's backstory, for people who don't understand how severe it can be, her backstory is pretty
Yes.
remarkable.
Yes. She, from the time she was born until the time she was 6 years old, she bounced back and forth between her birth mother's house and her maternal grandparents' house. And her birth mother was addicted to methamphetamine, and they were actually manufacturing meth in the house that they lived in. So she went through, a lot in that time, living there, and a lot of neglect and that kind of thing.
This is a condition that you're in. How dark did it get for you? Like, I imagine just you trying to raise her, and a new child in your family, trying to raise her. How dark did that get for you?
Very. It was, it was very, very hard. And my husband and I, from the minute that, we made a commitment. When these kids came into our home, they were our kids because we didn't want to set a child up for another rejection. And we remained committed to that, but our marriage was tested, our finances were tested, everything. I mean, just everything. It's the most difficult thing we've ever been through, but it's also the most rewarding thing we've ever been through.
Has the conversation around adoption changed over the years, do you think? Some of the stigma going on?
I do, and I've actually been thinking about that. I do think that the conversation has changed because I think it's so accepted now and it's so everyday. I mean, everybody's been touched by adoption in some way.
How much did you know, like when you watched this film back, was it as kind of mind-blowing as it was for a lot of people, for you?
Absolutely. I mean, but what was so inspiring about it is how well they actually did and how they triumphed over these difficulties. And guess what? There are parents out there, like Tiffany, who are willing to put in the hard work to be there and support these kids. And it's not just adoption of young babies necessarily. It's the kids that reach a certain age where suddenly they're stuck in the foster care system because they're just too old.
How prevalent is this attachment disorder? How prevalent is it? Because I know when some people watch this film, they're going to be scared. The concept of adoption will be scary to them. How prevalent is this?
I think I don't know how you can be 6 years old and get adopted and not have it. I'm not saying every child has it because they certainly don't, and I think every child's resilience is different, but I think it's a lot of families out there.
What did you think when he first came on board? Because he's clearly, he's a big supporter of this and very passionate about it. When you first heard that he was going to come on board, what were your thoughts?
I was so thrilled. I was just totally honored, and the other work that he's done, I felt like he was just the perfect fit, and it's just been amazing having him come on. It's beyond our imagination. It's been great.
It's amazing for me as well. I feel so accepted, and by the way, having only just met Faith, I would have never, had not seen the film, I could never tell that she had those issues because she's so warm and very smart and a great kid.
It's a big part of this film too, is not just watching it to understand what kids are going through. It also helps, I think, a lot of people understand themselves better and how they can relate to others. It's a big part of just opening up their own minds. You've got to see it. It's called My Name is Faith. It did premiere at the Hot Dogs Festival in Toronto. Tiffany, Adrian, great to see you guys. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll be right back.